Alright, g'day guys, Matt Preston, Built Cruisers. Welcome back to the channel, back to the vlog, back to the videos. Now it's very exciting, very good video today. GVM, Prado 90 series, M over GVM. All you guys say I am. Let's find out for real in this video. Also in this video, we're going to be doing a big comparison of lots of cars. I'm talking the 90 series, my 60 series, Y62, 300 series, 250 series Prado. So lots of very relevant and modern cars, and also the old classics like this one here. So we're going to compare all the GVMs, see the load capacity, towing capacity, all that sort of stuff, and figure out what's the sort of best for buck. But sneak peek, the older cars are doing it better. So let's run the numbers. The gross mass, I can sort of have this, gross vehicle mass, GVM, 2.770. So we'll round up to 2.8 ton, which is great, obviously, because the car itself weighs just under 2 ton, okay? So we've got 800 kilos to move around there for putting weight on here, okay? And the towable weight of this car, which is very interesting, is 280 kilos. So that's towable weight that you can put within the tow bar. So obviously if you have a trailer, all the weight will go through the wheels on the road there. You might have a towable weight of like 50 kilos. Whereas with the bike rack, as we know, there's no trailer there. So that's going to go straight on the back, and that plus the bike's 70 kilos, and that rack's about 70 kilos. So let's round up, 150 kilos for a bike and the rack. So that's good at least, because we know we're 130 kilos under the ball weight, which is 280 kilo rating. So that instantly covers that issue, and we're well in the clear for that. And that's all through the tow ball. Okay, so I've got a little list, as you can see on my phone, of a list of all the weights. So let's go through them. So front bar, as we know, it's a bit of a thinner bar, and you know, it's not exactly the highest quality. So it's not as heavy as most bars, which is obviously good for me in this situation. But honestly, it doesn't weigh that much. I'm gonna say 50, 80 kilos. So we'll just put in probably like 50 kilos. Now the rear bar, that's a bit heavier because of these swing arms either side. These are like proper thick steel here. So for the rear bar, it's about 100 to 120. So we'll just put 120 kilos. Now the water jerry, this is actually quite heavy. This is about 20 liters of water when that's fully filled up. The winch is also quite heavy. I want to put that at about 20 kilos as well. Spotties, now I've got 3 7-inch spotties, so that actually adds up a fair bit. I think they're about roughly like 4 to 5 kilos each, so we'll say 15 kilos for 3 of them. And remember, these weights are pretty rough, but hopefully I'm, if anything, making them slightly heavier per item. Now the roof rack, so the roof rack's just the Rhino Rack Pioneer platform. It honestly wasn't too heavy, and it's just got standard like little roof clamps there, and you know, there's a little bracket up here and that sort of stuff. So we'll write a bit more for that. Let's put that at about 100, which I feel like's quite heavy. That does also remind me the awning. Now this awning's very heavy. The awning's like 40 kilos. I think it's actually under that, but we'll put 40 kilos just to make you guys all happy. Now this is obviously a big category here. Rooftop tent, solar max tracks. Because I found out the other day that max tracks are like 20 kilos with 2 of them. It's actually quite ridiculous. So we're gonna add all these up. So rooftop tent is, I'm pretty sure that's 103 kilos. And then plus the solar panel, which is like, I think 7 or 13 kilos. I know all up, them two together, 120 kilos. So 120 plus the max tracks. So we'll say 140 kilos. Now remember, that's our dynamic load as well. We want to be under the dynamic load of when this is touring, which is about 200 kilos. So we are under that, so when we drive, we know that we are all good in that category. Now the fridge, obviously the fridge, 85 litre upright fridge, so that's going to be quite heavy. I'm going to say about 40 kilos. Battery system, 100 amp lithium battery, so obviously not AGM, so it's not going to be like stupidly heavy. But I'm going to put about maybe like 10, 20 kilos. We'll go 15 kilos. UHF, obviously not that heavy. We'll go like 5 kilos. That's sort of allowing for that little folding aerial bracket as well on the bar. 33 tyres, so obviously bigger than standard, as you can see here. But obviously not 35s or anything crazy. So I get about 5 kilos heavier per tyre So you got 5 of them there, you know, that's going to add up quickly. So we've got 25 kilos extra for the tyres size, going higher. And then the alloy rims. So obviously, this is 1996 Prado, so it actually comes with steel rims, unlike most other Prados of the era that came with alloys. But these are obviously quite nice ROH assaults here, all alloy. So I'm going to add about, I don't think it's that much heavier because they are alloy. I reckon I'll add probably like 2 kilos per rim. It's not that much. So 2 times 5, we've got 10 kilos there as well. And obviously there's other stuff we can add, like there's probably some, you know, miscellaneous wiring, like there's seat covers, but not really anything like crazy. You've obviously got the gas bottle itself as well, which is going to be 4 kilos. So we've got the gas bottle up here, which is 4 kilos. And then obviously that's most of the stuff that's sort of to do with the car. Engine's all the same, haven't touched that. You know, it's got a bit of a lift in it, but you know, it's not going to be that much heavy through those items. And remember, this is quite rough. There are camp lights up here as well, but yet again, you know, like could be a kilo for like all 4 of them. It's not really that much. I think we've done a pretty decent job here. Now, obviously, the tyre rack is where we're going to get a lot of this extra weight, the sort of recent mod. So for the tyre tray, which is in the same category as the rear bar, we've got the tyre tray itself, which is all aluminium cut. So it's not steel at least, which is super heavy. So I'm going to say it's about 20 to 10 kilos. It's quite heavy to do 15. I feel like that's pretty generous. And then your gas bottles on that and recovery gear. So yeah, we'll say recovery gear because that's in most four drives as well. Oh, and tools and that sort of stuff. So let's just add like 10 kilos. I think that's quite a lot for all those categories. Cool. So hopefully you guys somewhat agree with that list and aren't too salty right now, but that is a pretty rough list of all the weight we sort of have. Now remember, this doesn't include people or like sort of food when you're going away. And also little items like, you know, a camp chair and that sort of stuff. So there are those other things to consider as well. But don't get me wrong, once we add all these numbers up, it really stacks up. Okay, so I've done calculations. It's roughly 630 kilos, all up with all that stuff I sort of mentioned there. Now remember, this is a bit rough, like don't take this too seriously, but we're gonna be very close in that ballpark figure of that weight. So 630 kilos, and I remember the Prado weighs 2 ton from factory, okay? So 2 ton plus 630 kilos, obviously 2.63 ton, and our GVM's 2.8. All right, so we add up the bike carrier as well. It's actually a bit alarming now. It's kind of caught me off guard a little bit, but we're about 770 kilos. Now remember, this is quite rough. Don't take this as a definite. But obviously, yeah, that bike carrier and bike do add a lot of weights. Now, don't get me wrong, I don't take around this bike every single weekend. I go away camping. Just more every now and then if you've got the right camp spot for it, because obviously you can't just ride a bike sort of anywhere. But as we can see here, we're still under our GVM, which is 2.8 ton. Now I know what you're thinking. You're probably thinking, Matt, you're not, you know, 30 kilos. So you're gonna go over, and you'll be pretty much correct. So obviously, haven't even added food yet either. But if we add myself, and I'm 100 kilos pretty much, we're going to be 870, which is 70 kilos over our GVM. Now remember, that's with a bike, and that's with me just camping by myself. So we are slightly over by just quite a few kilos there. But remember, I don't really camp on a bike that often. So you can take that 150, and then, you know, by the time you see you add your food, 15 kilos roughly, give or take. And then obviously, you know, per person, it might be roughly 80 kilos. So it really just depends, obviously, who you're going with and what you're sort of doing. And that's why I do obviously believe the fact that almost every full drive in Australia is over GVM at the end of the day. Because as soon as you've got like 3 blokes, you've added like 300 kilos. And as you can see, you add your food, your cooking gear, all that sort of stuff, it really sort of adds up. And we've sort of allowed for like tools, cooking gear and that sort of stuff as well, because we've added 10 kilos for random, you know, recovery gear and tools and that sort of stuff. So it does definitely add up, and it was a bit of a shock to me because I thought I'd be a bit more than that. But this is obviously just a 90 series Prado. I haven't got a GVM upgrade or anything like that. And it goes to show with the bike and everything, we are absolutely pushing it. But for a one weekend night, you can take a bit of stuff out. Like you're not going to have 15 kilos worth of food and that sort of stuff. So you will obviously get lighter, which is good to know. But that's pretty much the truth for the Prado, is most of the time we're under. As soon as the bike's on and we get that extra kilo on there, it obviously adds up. But You can also see now I've taken the tyre carrier off and gas bottle, that sort of stuff. So right now where it's in its driving around city sort of mode, we're completely under that, which is really nice. Okay, so that's the Prado 90 series, fully in depth, very, very close, within, you know, maybe 50 kilos of the weight that I'm actually driving at. Remember, it's very rough, don't take it personally. I just feel like people are gonna really take that to exact calculations, but that's extremely rough. But you get a rough idea, and fair enough, because this car's really fully equipped to go in Australia whenever you want. So everything's in here, turnkey, away you go. So I have set it up like that on purpose, and obviously so I can just go away camping, come home ready to go, no worries. So super stoked with it, but obviously your GVM is going to get very close, if not go over. Now let's move on to a different car. So the 60 series Land Cruiser. Now, very exciting car, obviously we're building it up right now. And you're going to think, Matt, you know what, that's a massive car, you know, it's got, you know, a bigger body, all that sort of stuff, higher GVM. Well, you're wrong. So let's dive into it. Okay, so the 60 series 2H in my case, which is the one I've got, they weigh just over 2 tonne, give or take, depending on your model. If you have like a low-end model or Sahara, you know, you've got the higher roof, bit more metal in there, a bit more weight, but it's 2 tonnes and 50. So we'll just say 2 tonne, round it down. And then their GVM is, there's a few different sort of numbers going around, but it's pretty much 2.8. So it's like pretty much identical to the Prado 90, which I find quite funny because I don't know, the 60 series is a solid axle. It's a bit bigger, a bit beefier. It's got a heavier motor in it as well at the front, the 2H over this, but it actually has the same GVM, which is quite interesting. Now, that means obviously we have about 810 kilos because it's about 2.81 is really what it is. And so it's very similar to this, which kind of gives us the same confidence, same situation. If we do a very similar setup on the 60s we've got here, which is, you know, rooftop tent, awning, roof rack, fridge, whatever, all that in the 60 we have the same sort of issue where as soon as we get the bike on and all that sort of stuff, we're going to be very close to that edge. Now, you know, we might do a GVM upgrade on it, we'll see how we go, but that's just something for me to obviously keep in mind. And then, yeah, very similar, the turbo weight on the 60 is 90 to 250 kilos, so exactly the same as the Prado, pretty much. And yeah, tows 2.5 tonne, same as the Prado, which I thought was interesting. So obviously it really just depends what you do with your 60 or however you're going to load it out. But yeah, very identical specs to the 60 this car is, which I thought was interesting. One, because they're like 10 years apart. Two, one's a diesel and one's a Land Cruiser, big Land Cruiser. This is just a Prado. So there you go, in case you wanted to know that. Okay guys, so I thought I'd throw the Y62 into this, which is a bit random because it's not even a Toyota, but I just found it quite interesting. And I was talking to someone and I didn't realize that they would actually have less of a total carrying weight than the Prado could, which I find quite crazy because it's such a bigger car. So let's break it down a little bit. Okay, so the curb mass of a Y62, depending on what model you sort of have, 2,812 kilos to 2,861 kilos. So we'll just say, you know, 2.8 tonne pretty much, but it's extremely close between those variants of models. Now that's great and all, but the total GVM is 3.5 tonne, okay? Which sounds great because, you know, 3.5 tonne, that's a big number. And, you know, the car itself weighs 2.8 tonne, which is heavier when then this car is fully loaded, and the 60 series, which we found out earlier. So that's quite crazy to me. Obviously, you know, not so much this because it's a Prado, it's smaller, I sort of get that, but obviously the Land Cruiser is quite a big car. It's like 120 mil wider than this thing on the roof alone. But obviously the engine, a massive component, and not to mention luxury items like electrics, you know, heated seats. The seats alone are probably twice the weight of the 60 series seats, all that sort of stuff, airbags, all adds up, as we know. So, which pretty much means, if you haven't caught up yet, is, yeah, 2.8 tonne is how heavy the Patrol is, which is, yeah, max weight of this thing loaded, and 3.5 tonne, which sounds great. But the loading capacity of the payload is 639 kilos to 688 kilos. So, yeah, that's crazy to me. So that's almost 200 kilos less than what this car and the 60 can do. So without a GVM upgrade, like, it's crazy to me. And obviously it's all to do with that big V8 petrol engine in the front, really taking a lot of that weight down. But that's crazy. So if I want to do this exact loadout on a Y62, I just can't, which is obviously quite sad. And that's, if I do no bike and everything as well, it would probably just be over. And then with the bike, you're dreaming, not even close. So I just find that quite crazy, especially if you're spending so much more money on a car and you just can't even have that load. And obviously this is why people do camp trailers and that sort of stuff. And that's great if you want to go down that line, but sometimes you might want to you'll still be able to, you know, go in the city, do a hard track, and you might just want to put something in your tow ball and go sort of down that route, or rooftop down the roof like everyone does. But yeah, so that kind of shocked me a little bit of how much lower the GVM is for a Y62, considering it's such a bigger car. But don't get me wrong, you obviously get your perks: bigger engine, better power, quicker, can tow a ton extra. Like, there's so many perks, you know, 5-star safety rating, all that sort of stuff, whereas, you know, this has no airbags, do you know what I mean? So really just depends what route you want to go down. But I thought that was quite interesting to know, because at the end of the day, I feel like most people would just assume the bigger car, like a Land Cruiser, for example, would be able to always outperform a GVM than a Prado out of all cars, but that is not the case. All right, and not to mention, you can obviously get GVM upgrades, which are very popular to get through BMW and all them sort of companies. You can get to 4.5 ton. I think you can get, you know, 4.8 ton. You can really get up there in the weight, which is great, obviously, because like we just said before, by the time you've got all your gear, you might be able to take like 2 people and then you're going to be over, which is just crazy to me. But it is obviously a bit upsetting that you got to spend like 10 grand to get your GVM upgrade to just even match the 800 kilos you can really do in one of these stock. So that's quite crazy, but obviously you get those other perks like we mentioned, but I just thought I'd mention that. Okay guys, I thought we'd just quickly throw the 300 series into the equation, because it's a new car, relevant, sort of similar to the Y62. GVM 3,280 kilos. So it's about 220 kilos less than the Y62 from the start. And then the curb weight, 2,630 kilos, okay? So you can only legally carry 730 kilos, which is, you know, about 70, 80 kilos under the Prado here. So that's sort of good on paper. And it's also, the Y62 is about 80 kilos or so less. So obviously the Y62 does still have a low capacity that you can put on top of your car. Whereas the Land Cruiser is right in the middle between the old generation cars here, the 90s, 90 series Prado, and the Y62. So that's interesting to know, and who knows, that extra weight could be purely the engine, which it probably is. Also, not to mention that I'm pretty sure when they went from the 200 to the 300 series, they actually lost almost like 400 kilos in weight just on body parts and random stuff like that. So the 300 really cut down their weight a bit there, obviously with a smaller motor, but that is very interesting to know. Okay, I thought we'd do one more bonus entry because it is a brand new car. I'm based around a Prado channel, and it's not the 90 series, it's the 250 series Prado that just came out. So quick run of the numbers here. Obviously GX to VX, the specs are slightly different, but we'll do it off a GXL right in the middle, a fairly, you know, common model everyone's going to get. Same with this GXL. So yeah, the weight of it is 2.535 kilos, so 2.5 ton, we'll round it down. And yeah, the gross vehicle mass is 3,150, okay? So the payload capacity is 615 kilos. So what's crazy about that is it's even less than the Y62. It doesn't have a massive V8 in the front, and it still has a lot of technology like the Y62, but the Y62 is quite a big car, like physically, and it's really surprising. So pretty much these Prados that are coming out have a really bad rep in terms of payload, because like that's about 200 kilos under this 90 series here and my 60 series. So that's very interesting to know that these new modern cars, you're really not getting your bang for buck with the payload that you can actually put in there, and hence why these GVM upgrade kits are probably getting so popular, and unfortunately they just cost literally 10 grand or more. Like, it's ridiculous money, but that is very interesting. And the Prado does tow 3.5 ton, which is good obviously, because the old Prado, this one here, only 2.5. So at least they've sort of upgraded those other areas, but it's something to mention and think of if you're trying to get a car. Don't want to spend heaps of money, but you want to put heaps of weight in it and be under GVM. All right guys, thanks for watching the video. Now, remember, a lot of these numbers when I calculated the weight of my own car were very rough, so don't take it too personally. But that's gonna be a very close ballpark figure to what's actually going on in terms of the weight on this car, give or take. And then obviously those other numbers are pretty legit for all the other cars. And yeah, obviously it is what it is. More modern cars, more technology. Obviously they're gonna slightly lose out on that payload. And obviously these older cars like this one here behind me, you know, there's no electronics in the seats, there's no fancy airbags, none of that, and we'll be able to get a lot more weight out of them, which is honestly super practical, especially if you're like me and you're trying to tow a bike. But I guess if you have the new 250, Y62, 300 series, you know, you might just get a trailer and all your problems are sort of sorted there instantly, because as we know as well, all of them can tow 3.5 ton, which is, you know, an extra ton over this 90 series right here. So all very interesting stuff to learn. Let me know down in the comments below what you think, and don't go too hard on me. And if you guys want to subscribe, that'd be awesome. Try and hit 10,000 subscribers by the end of the year. And we'll catch you guys next time on Built Cruisers.